June 9th, 2009. Hamilton Avenue, Cobham, Surrey. One of those quiet residential streets where the biggest drama is usually a parking dispute or an overgrown hedge. The landlord stepped onto the gravel driveway, keys jingling as he surveyed his rental property. His previous tenants had moved out, leaving behind the usual mess of forgotten belongings and unpaid bills. But something else had been left behind too, something that would turn this ordinary Tuesday into a nightmare. A wheelie bin sat by the front door, positioned awkwardly where it didn't belong. The bin collectors had refused to take it. Too heavy, they said. Strange, but not alarming. Not yet. He gripped the handle, expecting to drag it to the curb. His muscles strained. The bin wouldn't budge an inch. What could possibly weigh that much? With growing unease, he lifted the black plastic lid. The smell hit him first, a nauseating cocktail of decay and something else, something chemical that made his stomach churn violently. Then he saw it, a pale human foot protruding from layers of black plastic, stark white against the darkness. "Oh my God," he whispered, stumbling backward. His trembling fingers dialed 999. Within minutes, police sirens shattered the suburban silence of Hamilton Avenue. As forensic officers carefully extracted the wheelie bin's horrific contents, the full scope of the horror became clear. The body was wrapped in a sleeping bag, partially clothed, a plastic bag around the head, an eye mask covering the face. The hot June weather had accelerated decomposition, but one thing was immediately obvious. This was no accident. This was murder. But the most chilling discovery was yet to come. When investigators identified the victim, they uncovered something that defied all logic. The dead woman was Melanie Wallner, age 30. According to official records, she had been deceased for 3 years. She'd had memorial services. She'd been mourned. Her family had buried her ashes on their farm in South Africa. How does a woman die twice? How does someone get mourned, buried, and grieved while simultaneously decomposing in a garden shed?
Before we dive in, do me one quick favor. If this story pulls you in, hit the like button and subscribe. It takes 1 second, but it helps these cases reach thousands more people who need to see them.
To understand how a vibrant young woman ended up decomposing in a wheelie bin, we need to go back to where it all began. Back to when Melanie Wallner still believed in fairy tales. Born in Pretoria, South Africa, Melanie, who liked to go by Melanie, had a way of drawing people in without even trying. Her laughter was the kind that filled a room and lingered in your memory long after she'd left. It's a rare gift, that kind of natural radiance. Some people light candles, others are the flame itself. But Melanie wanted more than what her familiar streets could offer. Her dreams stretched far beyond Pretoria's horizons, reaching toward that glittering promise of London, the city that has lured ambitious dreamers for centuries with its siren song of possibility and reinvention. In 1996, at just 20 years old, Melanie packed her bags and flew to London. She started at the bottom, waitressing at the House of Commons, but her natural leadership and infectious energy quickly caught attention. Soon she was promoted to beverage and food manager at upscale hotels across the city. It was at the Marriott Regent's Hotel in northwest London around 2000 that fate intervened. Or at least, that's what Melanie thought when she first laid eyes on Peter Wallner. Peter was everything Melanie thought she wanted in a man. He was handsome, confident, and disarmingly charming. A talented German chef, he came from a small Bavarian village and had trained at the renowned Four Seasons Hotel in Munich. After serving 3 years as a paramedic in the military, the kind of background that suggests someone who saves lives, who helps people, He'd returned to his culinary passion, thriving in the high-pressure world of professional kitchens. Their attraction was instant and intense. To everyone who knew them, they seemed like the perfect match. Two ambitious people in the hospitality industry, both far from home, both chasing their dreams in London. They married in 2001, and Melanie took his surname, officially becoming Melanie Wallner. They settled into a cozy home in Hammersmith, and for a while it seemed like the fairy tale was real. But fairy tales, as Melanie would tragically learn, don't always have happy endings.
Behind closed doors, the perfect marriage was crumbling. Peter's charm, so magnetic in public, turned cold and controlling at home. He was obsessively precise, demanding perfection in everything. Melanie couldn't even buy shampoo without his approval. He considered it an unnecessary waste of money. It's a classic pattern, really. The abuser who presents one face to the world and another to the person trapped in their private domain. But it was Peter's wandering eye that truly poisoned their relationship. What started as innocent flirtations escalated into full-blown affairs. He juggled multiple relationships with the same calculated precision he applied to his cooking, treating women like ingredients in a recipe he could swap out at will. When Melanie discovered his first affair with Lilia Finnick, a young foreign exchange student and waitress, her world shattered. But here's where her optimism became her prison. She refused to walk away. She pleaded with Peter to end it, insisting on counseling, on forgiveness, on hope. To prove her commitment, as if love is something that needs constant proof, she left her own hotel job, believing that time and patience could still mend what he had broken. It's heartbreaking, really. The way we sometimes love people into destroying us, the way hope can become its own form of blindness. When Lilia returned to Malta, Melanie dared to believe the worst was behind them. But Peter's infidelity didn't end. It simply changed faces, the way serial betrayers always find new targets once the old ones are no longer available. Enter Emma Harrison, a wedding planner at Woodlands Park Hotel, where they both worked. The irony is almost too perfect, a one whose job is creating fairy tale weddings, becoming complicit in destroying someone else's marriage. Their affair was no secret. Colleagues whispered in break rooms and exchanged knowing glances. Peter, unbothered by discretion, told Emma that he and Melanie were separated, a lie delivered with the same convincing calm he used to present a perfectly plated dish. The affair wasn't discreet. Everyone knew. Peter had told Emma he and Melanie were separated, another lie delivered with convincing ease. By August 2006, their marriage was hanging by a thread. Ever the optimist, she persuaded Peter to take a trip north to a festival in Scotland. Maybe distance could remind them of who they once were. Maybe a change of scenery could reset what had gone so terribly wrong. On August 27, 2006, they returned home. Melanie received the news she'd been waiting for years. Her British citizenship had finally been approved. Ecstatic, she texted her family in South Africa, planning a celebration. It would be the last message her family would ever receive from her. The final communication is always about hope, about future plans, about tomorrow. We never know which goodbye will be our last. What happened next would be debated in court, but the physical evidence told a clear, chilling story. That evening, Peter received an email from his former lover, Lilia Finnick. When Melanie discovered it, another argument erupted. But this time, instead of fighting back, Melanie simply went upstairs to sleep in a separate bedroom, putting on her eye mask to block out the world that had become so painful. As she lay sleeping, trusting in the safety of her own home, Peter made a decision that would define him as a monster. He went to the kitchen and selected a weapon, a heavy cast-iron griddle pan, the same type of cookware he used professionally every day. He climbed the stairs, his footsteps silent on the carpet. He stood over his sleeping wife, the woman who had loved him unconditionally, who had fought so hard to save their marriage. Then he raised the pan high above his head. The first blow landed just below her left eye with a sickening crunch, fracturing her skull. Then another, and another. 3 devastating strikes to her beautiful face, delivered with the calculated brutality of someone who felt nothing but hatred for the woman who had once been her everything. Melanie died instantly, still wearing the eye mask that had blocked her view of her killer's face. She never saw it coming, never had a chance to defend herself or plead for her life.
There's a small mercy in that, perhaps, that she didn't have to experience the terror of watching her husband become her executioner, didn't have to process the ultimate betrayal before darkness took her. What happened next revealed the true depths of Peter's depravity. Most killers, even in the heat of passion, show some remorse or panic after taking a life. Not Peter. He approached the aftermath of murder like a chef preparing a complicated dish, methodical, precise, and completely devoid of emotion. He wrapped Melanie's lifeless body in plastic bags to prevent blood spillage. He cleaned her in their bathtub, washing away the evidence of his brutality. He put her in the sleeping bag she'd used at the Scottish festival, a cruel irony that turned a symbol of their last happy moment into her burial shroud. Then he carried his wife's body to the garden shed and began planning her disappearance. The very next day, which happened to be Peter's 31st birthday, he celebrated with Emma Harrison, telling her he and Melanie had officially separated. While Melanie's body lay growing cold in the shed, Peter was kissing another woman, using the same lips that had once promised to love and cherish his wife till death do them part. It suggests something fundamentally missing in his emotional architecture, some crucial component of humanity simply absent from his wiring. 2 days later, Peter ordered a chest freezer. When it arrived a week later, he set it up in the shed and placed Melanie's decomposing body inside, where it would remain hidden for nearly 3 years. He then continued using Melanie's credit cards, running up £7,000 in debt in her name, the final insult to a woman who couldn't defend herself. On September 1st, 2006, Peter called Melanie's family in South Africa with devastating news. Their daughter had died suddenly from a brain aneurysm, he said, his voice heavy with false grief. Her mother, Jean, was devastated. Your child is always your child, no matter how old they are, no matter how far away they've moved. She immediately arranged to fly to the UK, desperate to see her daughter one last time, to say goodbye, to have that final moment that bereaved parents need for closure. But Peter, thinking quickly, dissuaded her from viewing the body. Melanie's face was roughed up very badly from the paramedics' attempts to save her, he explained. He couldn't bear for them to see her that way. Better to remember her as she was. The grieving mother, trusting her son-in-law's apparent care for her feelings, agreed. She had no idea that Melanie's body wasn't in any morgue. It was frozen in Peter's shed, treated like meat in cold storage. Peter planned 2 memorial services for Melanie, one in London and another in South Africa. At the London service, he delivered an emotional eulogy that moved everyone to tears. His performance was Oscar-worthy. But for the South African service, Peter took his deception to unprecedented depths. He burned wood on his barbecue until it resembled cremated remnants, placed the ashes in an urn, and flew to South Africa with it. At the memorial, he even placed his wedding ring in the urn, telling people he didn't believe in heaven, but had heaven on earth with Melanie. Melanie's family buried these fake ashes on the farm where she grew up, tears streaming down their faces as they scattered what they believed were their daughter's remains. Peter stood among them, dry-eyed and calculating, having literally gotten away with murder. For 3 long years, Melanie remained trapped in that freezer while Peter moved on with his life. He continued his relationship with Emma Harrison, but kept it secret from Melanie's family, wanting them to believe he was still grieving their daughter. It's a delicate balance, playing the devoted widower to one audience while playing the available bachelor to another. But Peter seemed to manage it with ease. But cracks began to appear in Peter's carefully constructed facade. Melanie's mother's maternal instincts told her something wasn't right. She repeatedly asked Peter for a copy of Melanie's death certificate, a document that, of course, didn't exist. Peter's excuses became increasingly elaborate. He claimed his father had suffered a heart attack and his mother had a stroke in Germany, preventing him from traveling or meeting them.
None of this was true. His parents were alive and healthy. each lie requiring another lie to support it, the web growing more complex and fragile with each passing month. Emma eventually saw through his inconsistencies. Disturbed by his evasive behavior and stories that never quite added up, she ended the relationship. It's worth noting that Emma seems to have had better instincts than many. She sensed something was wrong, even if she couldn't identify what exactly was off about Peter's carefully maintained facade. Peter quickly replaced her with another woman, Rebecca Jackson. He told her his wife had recently passed away, recycling the same narrative he'd used before, adjusted slightly for the new audience. When Rebecca became pregnant with his daughter, Peter continued to manipulate her with false stories about his parents' illnesses to avoid commitment. Just 6 weeks after their daughter was born, Peter told Rebecca he wanted nothing to do with the both of them. Meanwhile, he was secretly involved with yet another woman, Claire Trigger, a police dog trainer. Peter's web of lies was becoming unsustainable, and his manipulative behavior eventually cost him his job at Woodlands Park Hotel. By 2008, the walls were closing in. Melanie's mother received a parking ticket issued in her daughter's name, raising immediate red flags. It was impossible to explain. Dead people don't drive cars. Dead people don't get parking violations. She reached out to contacts in the UK and soon discovered a shocking truth. Melanie Wallner was not recorded in any London hospital or morgue. There was no death certificate, no official record of her passing. According to every official database, Melanie simply didn't exist as a deceased person. So she contacted someone in the UK to investigate. In December 2008, Peter stopped taking her calls entirely. It was his only option, really. He'd run out of plausible excuses, run out of ways to explain why basic documentation didn't exist. Silence was easier than continuing the charade. Around this time, his former lover, Lilia Finneck, returned from Malta and moved into the Hamilton Avenue house with Peter. She was strictly forbidden from entering the garden shed, with Peter claiming it contained nothing but an old freezer. But Peter's luck was running out. He fell behind on rent payments, forcing him and Lilia to flee to Malta. Before leaving, he had to deal with his frozen problem, Melanie's body. It had haunted him for nearly 3 years, the evidence that wouldn't go away, the secret that was becoming increasingly difficult to keep. He moved her remains from the freezer into the wheelie bin outside the house, wrapping her in plastic bags and the sleeping bag, hoping the garbage collectors would take her to the dump where she'd never be found. He sold the foul-smelling freezer to a local shop owner for £20. The shop owner passed it to his brother, who noticed a strong, quote, rotten meat smell every time he opened it, but thought nothing of it. Peter's final attempt to cover his tracks failed spectacularly. The wheelie bin was too heavy for the garbage collectors, who left it unopened, the first decision in 3 years that went against Peter's plans. 3 years of successfully maintaining an elaborate web of lies, and it all comes undone because sanitation workers followed their weight restrictions. 3 weeks later, on June 9, 2009, the landlord made the gruesome discovery. Peter's house of cards finally collapsed in the most public way possible. The police investigation moved swiftly. Door-to-door inquiries led detectives to the shop owner who had purchased the second-hand freezer from Peter. When the appliance was recovered and sent for forensic testing, investigators found traces of bodily fluid linked to Melanie, despite Peter's efforts to scrub it clean. In the garden shed, attention turned to a mattress that appeared unremarkable until forensic officers treated it with luminol, a chemical that reveals hidden or washed away bodily fluid. When sprayed, it emitted a faint blue glow under ultraviolet light, exposing what the naked eye could no longer see, traces of Melanie's vital fluid.
The crime scene was laid bare. The bedroom where Melanie was murdered. The shed where her body was stored like meat in a freezer for 3 years. The stained mattress and the wheelie bin where she was finally discarded like garbage.
The police launched an international media appeal for Peter Wallner. In a shocking display of arrogance, Peter himself called 999 from Malta, claiming he was shocked by the news of the body discovery and needed to speak to police. Perhaps he thought he could still talk his way out of it, that his charm and carefully constructed narratives could overcome forensic evidence. He was persuaded to fly back to England, and upon landing at the airport on June 11, 2009, detectives immediately arrested him on suspicion of Melanie's murder. During his police interview, Peter initially stuck to his fabricated story of self-defense, but when confronted with the evidence of the eye mask found on Melanie's body, proof that she was asleep when he killed her, his calm demeanor cracked. He became panicked and passive-aggressive, struggling to explain away the damning evidence. Police had also searched his belongings in Malta, finding his meticulously kept phone records. These showed that he'd been calling and texting Emma Harrison extensively in the lead-up to Melanie's death, confirming his ongoing affair and providing clear motive for murder. Peter Wallner's trial began in May 2010. He pleaded not guilty to murder, but guilty to manslaughter and preventing the lawful burial of a body, still clinging to his self-defense claim. The prosecution painted a clear picture of premeditated murder. Peter had killed Melanie because he wanted to continue his affairs without the inconvenience of a wife. The murder was described as a senseless killing motivated by the greed of this man to make way for a different woman in his life. In his defense, Peter Wallner sought to frame the brutal act not as cold-blooded murder, but as a moment of uncontrollable rage amounting to manslaughter. Wallner's central claim was that he had lost the plot during a heated domestic dispute. He alleged that the violence was triggered when Melanie hit him with a rolling pin and then confronted him about a compromising text message from another woman, suggesting the fatal assault was a reaction to provocation. While he denied murder, he pleaded guilty to manslaughter, admitting that he had struck her with a heavy cast-iron pan. Furthermore, Wallner admitted to the calculated cover-up that followed, a crime for which he pleaded guilty to preventing a lawful burial. Ultimately, the jury rejected Wallner's defense of a sudden loss of control, agreeing with the prosecution that the evidence suggested a premeditated killing driven by his desire to remove his wife so he could pursue his womanizing. On June 4, 2010, 34-year-old Peter Wallner was found guilty of the murder of his 30-year-old wife, Melanie Wallner. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 20 years. Peter Wallner remains in prison to this day. The case of Peter and Melanie Wallner serves as a chilling reminder that the greatest monsters often wear the most charming masks. For Melanie's family, the trauma was immeasurable. They had not only lost a beloved daughter and sister, but had been manipulated and lied to for 3 years while grieving for someone who had been murdered in cold blood. They had buried an empty urn filled with barbecue ashes while their daughter's body lay frozen in a shed, treated with less dignity than meat in a butcher shop. The fake funeral, the elaborate deception, the calculated cruelty, all of it compounded their grief beyond measure. Melanie Wallner dreamed of a fairy tale marriage, but found herself trapped in a nightmare with a man who proved himself incapable of loving anyone but himself. Her only crime was believing in love, fighting for her marriage, and trusting the man who promised to protect her. The wheelie bin on Hamilton Avenue was Peter Wallner's biggest mistake, but for Melanie's family, it was also their salvation. The key that finally unlocked the truth about what happened to their beloved daughter, sister, and friend. In the end, justice was served, but it came 3 years too late. Melanie, or Melanie Wallner, deserved so much better than the monster she married. and her memory deserves to be more than just another true crime story. She was a vibrant woman with dreams, hopes, and a generous heart who fought for love until her very last day. That's how she should be remembered. Not as a victim in a wheelie bin, but as a person who mattered, who was loved, and who will never be forgotten.
Thank you for watching and staying till the end. Every story we tell is a piece of someone's truth, and your support helps keep their voice alive. If you felt something today, don't just move on. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so together we can keep shining light into the darkest corners of the human mind.